What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Casey and this is my Jeep. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about my 5 favorite mods that I've done on my Jeep to help me run my 37-inch tires. If this is your first time stopping by the channel, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. So if you enjoy great videos about off-road vlogs, news, install guides, and reviews, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about 5 of my favorite modifications that I've done to my Jeep in order to help me run my 37-inch tires, and the ones that I've found have made the biggest impact and the most difference to me, either through reliability, strength and performance, or general safety on my Jeep. Putting large off-road tires on your Jeep makes quite a big difference to both your off-road capability, but as well some of the stress and strain that it puts on all of the mechanical components. The first mod that I wanted to talk to you about is going to be my tire carrier. Now, obviously when you upgrade your tires, you want to bring a spare tire that is the same as the rest of your wheels. And when you go to a 37-inch tire and probably an aftermarket wheel, you're adding a lot of weight to your rig, and the factory tire carrier is going to be inadequate with carrying a 37-inch tire. Now, there is a ton of different solutions out there for tire carriers, and I'm not going to do a whole video about, what are the benefits and pros and cons of all the different tire carriers out there. But the first thing that you should consider if you're going to run a 37-inch tire, obviously make sure you're bringing a spare with you, and you're going to need some sort of way to carry that around. The second thing is going to be, how do you fit those 37-inch tires? Now, I'm going to assume if you're planning on running 37-inch tires on your JK, you've already got some sort of lift. Now, I have seen some guys get away with as low as a 2.5-inch lift. I have a 3.5-inch lift on my Jeep. And with all of the extra accessories and weight that I've added to it, it is running at a true 3.5 inches. So you're going to need, obviously, some sort of lift. But something else that you're going to need to do is have flat fenders. Now, there's lots of guides out there on how to trim your OEM fenders so that they're flat. And I think it looks pretty good. And a lot of places where you wheel, those fenders work out really well. But there's also lots of aftermarket options. You can either go with plastic, or you can go with steel or aluminum. Now, I've gone with steel because of where I wheel. As you've seen in some of my other videos and my vlogs, I'm always pushing trees and branches and different things out of the way. So having those steel fenders allow for me to not be constantly ripping off a plastic fender or damaging them. All right, third thing, and I highly encourage you to consider taking a look at your brakes. When you put large 37-inch, really heavy off-road tires on your Jeep, you're adding a ton of rotational mass, which means it's much, much harder to slow down. The increase in stopping distance when you add these heavy tires is quite significant and very noticeable. When I put my aftermarket brakes on, I noticed a huge difference in my ability to stop. Having that assurance that my Jeep can stop if I need to, especially from higher speeds, is very assuring. And I added the Dynatrac Progrip brake kit to my Jeep. It wasn't all that expensive. It reuses your factory calipers, and it just replaces the rotors, as well as it gives you some brackets to move your calipers out to accommodate the larger rotors. There's tons of them out there. Terraflex makes something, Alcon makes something, Dynatrac makes them as well, and there's lots of options. The fourth thing that I really like, and I think this is probably one of the less frequent modifications, maybe because you don't know about all the options and lower cost alternatives, but for me, adding hydro assist to my Jeep makes a huge difference, especially when I'm out there off-roading and navigating through tight trees and obstacles and things like that. My steering wheel isn't getting ripped out of my hand when the tires want to go in one direction and I want it to go in another. That hydraulic ram attached to your tie rod is going to push the tires and the wheels and the steering and everything in the direction that you want them to go, and it's going to hold them there and allow you to put your Jeep exactly where you want it. I went with a setup from a company called West Texas Off-Road, and they provide what's called a redneck ram. You basically send them your steering box, they port it, and they send you back your steering box, all of the hydraulic lines, the ram, the mounting tabs, everything. You just need to put your steering box back in, run the lines, and mount up the ram where your factory steering stabilizer would go. And that's it. There are other kits out there from companies like PSC, which cost 2 or 3 times as much as the kit from West Texas Off-Road. But this kit allows you to get hydro assist onto your Jeep, really affordable. And to me, the benefit is just constant. I really like it. You know, a sector shaft is quite a common thing to break if you're out on the rocks or really hard terrain when you're off-roading. And the hydro assist is going to take the pressure off of your sector shaft, which is connecting to your pitman arm, which then goes down your drag link, down to your tie rod, and all through your steering. So that ram moves a lot of that pressure requirement down to the tie rod and through the hydraulic ram and off of your sector shaft and pitman arm. We can't do an upload talking about running 37-inch tires without addressing the front axle of these JKs. Now, there's going to be 2 options that you have. You either have a Rubicon with a Dana 44, which is going to have a larger ring and pinion, or you're going to have not a Rubicon, whether it's a Sport or a Sahara, and it's going to have a Dana 30. That Dana 30 is going to have a smaller ring and pinion. That smaller ring and pinion with the Dana 30 and running 37s, you have to be extremely cautious when you're off-roading, as it is a weak point and a likely point for failure. The Dana 44 is much more resilient and much stronger with its larger ring and pinion, and is going to hold up with these larger 37-inch tires. Even with that Dana 44, one thing that I would definitely look at doing is getting some C braces. They are probably the weakest point on the Dana 44 axle. They can bend, and when you do, you're pretty much buying a new housing. You can sleeve your axle, which is basically going to put a set of sleeves down the axle tube, effectively making the wall thicker. But Dynatrac did a really good test on how much actual strength that provides, and it is quite minimal over, say, buying a bigger housing. But they were showing some of the performance benefits on how much bending that an axle can take, and sleeving it really doesn't add a whole lot of strength to the axle. The other thing you can do is trussing it. Now, trussing it is really kind of a double-edged sword. If you truss it properly, you can add strength to it, but trussing it properly means not bending it. When you weld that truss on, you're heating and cooling the walls of your axle tubes. It is very easy for that heating and cooling process to actually warp your axle and put a bend in it. So the cost of having that truss, actually buying the truss, stripping your axle down, and then having it welded on properly can get quite expensive. And the benefit is not as good as, say, buying a new housing, an aftermarket housing. So by the time you strip your axle down, buy the truss, and then get somebody, well, maybe if you know how to weld, but if you have to go get somebody to weld it on, your cost is going to be quite high. And at that point, I would really consider looking at something aftermarket from somebody, say, Dynatrac or Curry, who make aftermarket 44 housings, which allow you to use your stock internals, or you may want to re-gear. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. So something to consider is what you want to do to upgrade your axle to add some extra strength to run those tires. And the second part of that is the actual gearing of your Jeep. So putting those 37s on are going to make a huge difference in how quickly your Jeep takes off the line, and whether it's hunting through gears or, you know, basically you can't even get into top gear if you have a manual. So running 37s, you want to consider a re-gearing option. And the option does change depending on whether you have a 3.6 liter, 3.8 liter, automatic, manual, Dana 30, Dana 44. And there's probably a whole video I could shoot on which gearing option you want to go to. And that's probably a good idea for a future video. So something to research and take a look into is what gears you're running. And then when you do change your gears, you're going to want some sort of performance tuner to adjust your speedometer and get some of your fuel mileage back, and just generally bring back as much performance to your Jeep as you can. So that was, the last one was kind of a long one, and you know, if you kind of break down, this is probably more than 5 points, but the axle, the gearing, and the tuning, they all go together. They're all kind of one cohesive unit. In my circumstance, I actually bent my Dana 44, so I had to throw it out. I bought a Pro Rock 44, re-geared, used my factory locker, put some chromoly shafts in there to strengthen, basically strengthen the axle shafts and prevent them from breaking. And now my front end is bulletproof for running 37s. The rear in the JKs is a semi-float rear end, which means that your axle shaft has a flange on it, and so your tire is actually resting all of its weight on that flange on the axle shaft. there's not much you can do about that short of upgrading to a full float rear end, which gets pretty pricey. You just got to kind of take it careful, dropping off ledges and things like that, and just reduce the opportunity to actually bend that rear flange. I've been lucky enough not to bend any flanges, but I have seen them bent on other rigs. So I think those are probably the best 5 things that I can tell you guys if you're wanting to run 37s and get the best performance, the best drivability, the best off-road capability, and what I found are probably the best 5 investments of my money into my Jeep, if you can call it an investment, but where I get the most benefit, whether it's safety, off-road capability, general performance. That's where I would recommend looking if you're looking for things to upgrade to and you want to run 37-inch tires on your Jeep. With all that being said, guys, thanks so much for watching this upload. I appreciate all the new subscribers on the channel. Thanks so much for joining and subscribing. I really do like having all you guys here and watching my videos. It really does mean a lot to me, and that everybody's watching them and you guys are enjoying them. So as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. It really helps my videos get noticed on YouTube, and then that way YouTube recommends them to other people and more people get to benefit from my advice and my experiences. As well, leave a comment below. I love answering all of your comments. I answer as many as I can, although I am starting to get a ton of comments on my videos, but I do try to answer them all, and I do read every single comment. Absolutely. Every time somebody leaves something, if I don't reply to it, I have read it. With that said, guys, smash that subscribe button, join the channel here, turn those notifications on so you don't miss any of my uploads. Thanks so much for watching this week's video. I hope you found it helpful and informative as always, and I'll see you guys in the next upload.